There are many people out there who claim to follow Jesus Christ, but do not believe that Jesus is divine. Right? And scholars have long debated what it means, but in the context of the passage here, Paul's using a Jewish form of literary rhetorical device known as synonymous parallelism, where in order to explain one expression, the form of God, he's going to give another expression, equality with God. So, point number 2 there, he says, although being in the form of God, he did not regard equality with God as something to be grasped, right? So the Greek word there, isa, literally means equal, right? Or equality, to be equal with God. Now, this is a very important passage for us as Catholics to be familiar with because, as you may know, there are many people out there who claim to follow Jesus Christ, but do not believe that Jesus is divine, right? Have you met people like this? Have you encountered them before? I'll never forget one time I had some Jehovah's Witnesses come to my door, right? And they knocked on the door, and I said, okay, kids, here we go. Daddy's going to answer the door. It might be a minute, okay? And they came in, they said hello, and I said hello, and, they asked, who are you, or, what religion do you belong to? I'm a Catholic, and we start talking. And, of course, we immediately get into the question of the identity of Jesus, right? And they said, we want you to know that we believe in Jesus. We follow Jesus. And I said, oh, well, that's great. Do you believe that he is fully God and fully man? Do you believe he's fully divine? Because I knew they didn't, and I want to go straight to the point, because sometimes they'll try to mislead you into thinking, well, we believe in Jesus, right? And get you to think, well, that means we have the same faith. But it doesn't. They don't, because they deny his full divinity. They actually believe that he is the highest of the angels. He's the archangel Michael, okay? So I said, well, I believe Jesus is equal to God. Do you believe that? Of course, they started to get a little sheeple. No, that's not actually believe. So I said, well, let me tell you why. And we began to go through passages in the Bible. John chapter 20. Sorry, it's what I do for a living, right? If they'd have asked me to do 20 push-ups, I wouldn't have been so successful. All right. Okay, so we began to go through the passage, of course, John 20, where Thomas says, my Lord and my God, right? But I also immediately went to Philippians 2, because it says that Christ did not regard equality with God something to be exploited, right? So the eternal Son, Christ the Son, is equal to God the Father. It says it right there in the Greek. And my brothers and sisters, we need to be clear about this, and we need to tell people about the divinity of Jesus. There may have been a time where you could assume everyone knew Jesus was divine. You can't anymore, all right? And Paul knows it too. We need to affirm, we need to propose, we need to proclaim the divinity of Christ. So point 3 then, he goes on to say, even though Christ was equal with God, he did not regard that as something to be grasped. And the Greek word there is harpagmon. And as Dr. Hahn pointed out last night, there's debate about how to interpret this. Some people think it refers to something Jesus already possessed. Some people refer to it as something Jesus has not yet possessed. He doesn't yet possess divinity, so he's going to seize at it. But the traditional interpretation has always been that it is something that Christ already possesses as the eternal Son, but it's something he's not going to exploit, right? The NRSV does a good job with this. He did not regard equality with God as something to be exploited, but rather, number 4, he emptied himself. And the Greek word there is kenosis, right? To pour out. He emptied himself in becoming man. Now, a couple of points about this. First, this does not mean that Jesus emptied himself of his divinity, that he somehow became undivine when he became man, right? Rather, what it means is that he takes the form of a man, he takes human form by being born in the likeness of men in the Incarnation. In assuming our human nature, a fully human nature, he remains divine. Right? This is the great mystery of the Incarnation. As Paul will say elsewhere in Romans chapter 8, verse 3, he came in the likeness of human flesh. Now think about that for just a minute. What would it have been like to actually be with Jesus? To walk with Jesus, right? 30-something-year-old young man, right? Who is also the one who made the universe. What a mystery. The mystery of his emptying, his kenosis, of coming down to our level as humans in order that he might raise us up to his. Many centuries ago, St. John Chrysostom wrote a commentary on Philippians. It was a homily that he delivered in the church in Constantinople in the 5th century. And this is how he expounded these words of Paul. St. John Chrysostom said, Christ was not only human, which is what he appeared to be, but also God. We, meaning we humans, we're soul and body, but he is God, soul and body. For this reason, Paul says, in the form. And so that when you hear of his emptying, you may not suppose that he underwent change or degradation or some sort of annihilation of his divinity. But remaining what he was, he assumed, that's the key language, he assumed what he was not. Becoming flesh, he remained the Word of God.